Well, hello, hello. Welcome everybody to the June 2023 meetup for Too Sexy with Octane and DNN. Fantastic structured content solution sitting on top of DNN or Octane. For those of you on the .NET Core side of things and Blazor, may be interested in Octane. DNN, of course, more legacy system built on .NET framework, but Too Sexy's been around for quite some time, as many of you know. Those of you that are joining this online after the fact and not live, welcome. Thanks for checking out the YouTube channel. If there's content that you would like to see, please post in the comments below what you would like to see, and we'll try our best to get that queued into one of the monthly meetups here. So we kind of have three different formats, and this week, or this month, excuse me, we are doing the show and tell kind of format. So this is kind of bring what you've been doing. It's pretty informal here. So if there's stuff that you have been kind of working on or exploring with Too Sexy and kind of want to just show it off and say, hey, look at this cool thing I figured out or I've done. That's what this format is more about. As far as community buzz, though, before we get into it, let me do it. I just realized I'm not sharing my screen. My bad. Let me make sure I get the right screen here. Tell me if you are seeing the meetup information.
Yes.
Yep. Okay, good deal. Yeah, so before we get into the show and tell time, just cover a few community announcements as it relates to Too Sexy. Some of us just got back from DNN Connect, which was over in Champéry, Switzerland. What was that? Daniel, that was the 25th through the 28th of May,
Yeah,
I believe.
25th, 28th, yeah. Most of us were there on the 24th.
And the Too Sick team, which is the team behind Too Sexy, was there, and or at least some of them were there, including Daniel Mettler, and it was really great to connect with them in person and talk about some of the great things. One of the things we learned at the event is, well, I guess we learned it right before the event, but we got to dig a little bit deeper into it, was they have Tau Day. You know, they always do something pretty big for Tau Day. Those of you that have read Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy will know that the answer is 42 to everything in life, but they try to do something big, announce, you know, some release or whatever during that time, as well as I think they try to do the same thing around the 4th of May. So may the 4th be with you. See what we did there. And they usually have a series of announcements on all that. So during those two kind of things, one of the things that come out is that they, instead of releasing an LTS version of version 15, they actually jumped to version 16 for the LTS and put a whole bunch of new stuff in there that we just didn't know was coming. One of those big things was a presentation that Daniel did at DNN Connect talking about dynamic data sources. And if you haven't seen about all that, let me see if did he post a blog on that? I'm sure he did, because he always blogs on stuff, but let's see if we can find a blog on that. If you go out to toosexy.org and go to the blog page, let's see. Oh yeah, that's a new thing too. We'll talk about that in just a second. This is the Tau Day release. That's blog 6 being released. This is, let me scroll on down. Yeah, there's so much to talk about here. Good grief. Okay, so this is one of the things, but let me keep going down. So this is the May the 4th thing. That's when they announced the LTS of version 16 here on May the 4th. And then shortly thereafter was a blog post on these dynamic data sources. I attended this session, and Daniel, you attended that one as well, didn't you? Or did you just catch the end of it or something like that?
I was on that one too. Yeah,
that's right. Yeah, you were. It was pretty interesting because, you know, you've always had the capability within Too Sexy to build your own custom data sources, but you kind of had to understand a lot of the internal workings of Too Sexy in order to be able to do it effectively. And it was not as documented as, you know, some of the other areas, but what they've done here now is they've made it super easy to build your own data sources, whether that's within the DNN scope or outside. Just being able to quickly do that, and they do a lot of the wiring up for you, so it becomes pretty trivial now to build your own data sources. So, you know, a use case could be that Let's say you're using the old FAQ modules in DNN or something, and you've got some questions and answers there that you want to now visualize in TwoSexy. You could easily build a data source to those tables and pull in that data and visualize it quickly in TwoSexy. So it's a whole lot easier than it used to be able to manage those custom data sources. Used to, you would have to write a bunch of C#, you know, to be able to kind of do that yourself and leverage it. But now they've got some stuff that just lets you wire it up really quickly. So I thought that was pretty exciting. I'm probably talking 900 miles per hour because that's just the way my day has been. So I apologize if I'm talking too fast. I will slow down and take a breath. Also, if any of you know a little bit more about some of this and want to dive deeper or whatever, just let me know. Interrupt me. Another thing is version 2 of the formulas feature in TwoSexy was released as a part of the version 16 release. And now formulas is that much better, and they've got IntelliSense and they've got promise support. So that is fantastic. You can do a lot of extra things. Now, it's my understanding, you know what, Jeremy, this may have been the thing that you wanted to show, but I don't remember 100% sure. It was kind of in a hidden area, and it wasn't so obvious as to how you work with formulas now, because they kind of changed the way that or where you work with those at. So some of that's covered in this blog post. Let's see, new one is the WYSIWYG modes that they support now, different modes within the editor. I personally do not know a ton about this, but I am interested in it. I just hadn't had time to look into it because all this got released right at the beginning of May here. So if anybody knows any more about this and wants to share about it, go ahead and chime in. Going once.
I think it's basically, it gives you different toolbars, and it basically restricts what's available on the toolbar. So if you want users only editing English, or not to be able to add a photo or just do plain text, you can limit them. It's not so much that it has expanded capability, I believe. I mean, the expanded capability is wonderful that you can drag photos on, etc. But yeah, I think that's mainly restricting the toolbars.
Okay, so they've just made that easier. I guess you could do that before just by toggling through, but you're saying like you could kind of configure how it works out of the box now. Is that,
yeah,
is that correct?
I think there's some set modes and you can choose those. I don't know whether you can fine tune it, but probably.
Yeah, okay, that's kind of cool. My guess is it's at a settings level or something on the app, but I'm not 100% sure. But yeah, if you want to learn a little bit more about that, you can check out this article. Let's see what else we got. Lots of goodies. Custom content delivery network for GDPR is available. I don't know too much about that, but I guess they are offering that CDN or something to serve up the to address some of the challenges in the EU on this. So if you're concerned about GDPR, and I think that's spelled wrong, it should be GDPR, but this helps you with some of that. Let's see what else we got. Blog 6 has been released. That's one of the apps that is available for free in their app gallery there. So it's using responsive WYSIWYG content and the Zen edit experience. And that's what I was thinking about with the editor. I think there's another blog post up here on that. So let me scroll up a little bit. Yep, that's it. Responsive Zen, WYSIWYG, and typed code. I don't know a whole lot about this, but this looked interesting to me. I guess it's a way to change the modes of the viewports or something as you're working on it or something. And Zen editing experience. Wow. Does anybody know much about this? And have you played around with it? Edit UI can now be open to only show a few fields. This is great for long WYSIWYG scenarios where you just want to work on the body and not get distracted by the clutter of 20 other fields. Oh, okay. So maybe it's kind of like a view only that field type situation so that you don't have all the other fields getting in the way and have to continually scroll and resize and stuff. Okay, that's kind of cool. And list editing enhancements. What in the world is that? Oh, okay. So we've got a new kind of experience here when you've got items in a list that you're managing there. So allowing you to add, remove, edit directly. So I think before you only had edit and delete, if I remember correctly, on that. So I guess now it's a quick way to add or add an existing, I guess is what that is, the list with a plus. That's kind of cool. Looks like some workflow enhancements for Evoke users, enhanced Razor experience with some insights. That's kind of cool. New typed Razor code. Not sure exactly what that means, but that sounds cool. And Octane WASM support. So I'm assuming there's some optimization there to support. There's two different modes in Octane that you can kind of run things, and one is WASM mode, which is WebAssembly. Daniel, do you remember off the top of your head WebAssembly? I don't remember what it's called.
I had to go do something, but typed Razor code. He briefly mentioned it in his presentation, but he didn't have enough time to go into details. But basically in Razor, instead of as dynamic, it could be as your specific type, and then you have strong types in your Razor file.
Oh, that's kind of cool. Okay, so
cool.
This is why I couldn't remember the rest of it, because that's it. It's just WebAssembly. So
yeah. So that's
awesome.
That's pretty cool also.
Yeah. Which is kind of a big deal, because I think this is one of the hurdles that they needed to kind of get over, is being able to run so basically it's running either client side or server side. So WebAssembly is a way to run compile code in the browser context instead of on the server. So just another mode of Blazor.
And one thing you mentioned also, a lot of link issues and limitations are solved by having typed entities. So that could be something cool also for using link.
Yeah. So lots of announcements there, lots of goodies for us to now learn and explore. But I think the big takeaway is that now we have an LTS finally, since I think the last one was in version 14 there somewhere. So it's nice to have that stamp on there and be able to confidently use those in a production environment. So it's really cool. Any other things in the community related to SuSexy that anybody wants to bring up that I missed? Going once, twice, 3 times. Okay, you're out.
I'd almost like to bring up the whole subject of how Daniel uses LTS versus the rest of us again, but that's probably a conversation for another non-recorded time.
It's a can of worms, right, Jeremy? It's a sore spot sometimes. But that being said, this is early in the major version release cycle, so hopefully, unless you have something crazy at the very end of the major version, you're probably not going to run into some of the pain points that we ran into. We'll see. But yep, for now, it's still called long-term support, even though sometimes there's not actual free support, if you will, to bring that.
Yeah,
back
not much respect for the word long in long term.
Yeah, and also, I mean, this is a good opportunity too to just go ahead and plug this because Daniel was mentioning to me that that they've tried to start this new Patreon or patron kind of model where there's some advanced features and so forth that are paid for, and the way that they're doing that is kind of interesting in the sense that, like, if you sponsor either through GitHub sponsors, or I think that, well, you can either sponsor Daniel Metler directly or the 2SIG org. I think you'd prefer the org, but you can do it either way. If you're sponsoring them, then you get credits essentially that you can then use within 2Sexy to apply those advanced features to a particular website or websites, and some of them are fantastic. I think just the caching one alone is a pretty big one for performance gain. So just check those out. But that one of their challenges is getting that word out and communicating it properly. They've got blog posts and all that, but we're all busy and don't catch every single communication that comes out there. So if there's stuff that you know, that they're trying to make that a little bit more obvious in the UI. And I personally haven't seen how they've done it in 16, but I think they have made some changes as to where that stuff is or how obvious that those things even exist. So something that interests you, you know, to get some of the more advanced features, that's a great way to do it. If you go to, you know, to show it, if you go to GitHub, if I can type github.com/2sick, you should see a sponsoring button. Well, a sponsor button if you're not sponsoring. If you are sponsoring, it'll show sponsoring, but you can come into here and see, like, I'm already sponsoring for right now at a $25 a month level. I've varied that from time to time, but you can select a new tier for this, and there's kind of the canned ones that they have, but then you can also put in your own amount. So if you don't fit perfectly into this mold here, no worries, you can do your own amount. But you can see here in the description, if you do 20, it's basically a credit per dollar that you sponsor at, and this helps them to maintain the platform. And it's open source. I mean, it's crazy advanced, right? And we've just grown accustomed to having it, but just remember that this is free, you know, for us to use and stuff like that. So any kind of support is really appreciated. Even if you don't use those advanced features, we haven't used a whole lot of them, honestly. Interested in them, but it's just, you know, we're kind of in our normal flow, and we don't really think about them too much on individual instances, but plan to. And then thank you, John. You posted a link in there. They've got patrons.2sexy.org, and then /features will get you to the features that you have available through this. I didn't even know this existed. Thank you for posting this. See, there you go. That's case in point. They're having a hard time kind of getting the word out about this even being available. So check this stuff out. This will tell you the different things you can use within this program. And I think it's a great idea. It's a great way for them to get a little bit of support, but also for you to get some bang for that support, you know, bang for that buck. Yeah, this is, let's see, the web form caching. There's something, yeah, this one here, the patron perfectionist is one I was talking about earlier. It just super improvement for performance and output caching and all that. Yeah, it's kind of cool. Okay, I wonder what they built this in. All right, so I think that's probably it for the announcements, unless anybody else has anything.
I guess just from.
I just wanted to call out that they have done a great job. If anyone noticed, the last 3 to 5 months were really frustrating because there was a lot of stuff being added without documentation.
Yeah.
And the documentation has been aggressively updated recently, and those blog articles. And I got to really highlight, especially the Razor tutorials. This stuff is fantastic now. So many great working examples in here that you can just plug and play in your code. Highly recommend people get their head around the images, you know, using picture and the image tag stuff to inject your images into your HTML instead of the old way. Fantastic improvements for almost no effort once you learn how they work.
Yeah, I was gonna. I'm glad you brought that up, Jeremy, because this page here alone. I mean, there's a whole documentation section also, but a lot of times you'll find that some of it's outdated in there, or you know, not exactly easy to follow and so forth. But this is absolutely a go-to because there's a plethora of stuff in here, and pretty much every scenario you can think of that you would use with 2Sexy is going to probably be covered somewhere in here. So each section has subsections within it, and then when you click on one of them, for instance, work with HTML, when you click on that, you get, you know, code snippets that you know, how it works, as well as some more information, detailed information about it, and kind of cycle through this. It's a little bit weird how you navigate it, but this is kind of left and right within that section. And you can always go back as well, but lots of great information in here. Some of the more newer ones, like with DataSources, I think they've got one here for dynamic data sources now. I was looking at, yeah, this is it, where you can quickly learn about
Fantastic.
the dynamic data source stuff. Really cool.
On top of that, the documentation is indeed great. The software itself too is pretty darn good. Like some of the earlier versions had some little glitchy things, and I haven't experimented with some of the deluxe features, but with the basic stuff, it's very solid. Which it's
I
nice
agree.
to see it
Nowadays,
maturing.
it's
That was, you know, I know a lot of times the attendees of this meeting, at least live, we're all kind of in the DNN space. But I was asking Daniel Metler a little bit about how things are going with the Octane side of things, you know, and how that's going over there. And I was curious as to whether or not, you know, he knew of any, you know, activity as far as like real production websites being built on this with Too Sexy and everything. And he didn't know a whole lot in there, but he did say that they've got one fairly large project that's getting ready to start. That's going to be more of a back end kind of project, you know, with it for it. But it's nice to, you know, it's one of those things where a client has to understand what they're getting into when they choose something like Octane for their base, you know, because things move so much more rapidly, quicker, you know, than they do in the .NET framework space.
David?
Yes.
I believe I recall that Sean posted a notice, Facebook or somewhere, saying that new things are ahead and he's resigned his position. And so I don't know if he's heading towards Octane or if he's got something on a parallel separate track. So
No, I'm glad you brought that
thumbs
up,
up.
John. Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because that is fairly significant, right? Or it could be very, very significant. Yeah, Sean's done this before with DNN, kind of jumped out on a limb and really started things up with that. And we may see some more activity around Octane because he has left his, you know, day-to-day job and decided to focus more on this kind of stuff. It was a little bit cryptic, but we could probably put some pieces together and assume that, you know, part of it's got to do with Octane on that. So that could be really exciting. It's definitely something worth watching. You know, again, it's a totally different technology stack, but very similar kind of concepts, you know, that were used to build Octane off of, you know, things that were learned in DNN. So there's some parallels there and understanding all that, but, you know, obviously a totally different stack. But it'll be nice to see some traction on that. So stay tuned. See anything else before we jump into show and tell? Okay, cool. Well, I'll open up the floor. Does anybody have anything to show or tell that you've been working on lately, or anything cool that you've been doing, or something that you're curious about and want to throw out a question and see if anybody knows the answers?
So on last meeting, you put me on the spot to try and build Too Sexy, which was interesting. I actually spoke with Daniel Metler at the DNN Connect. We kind of went to the bar and stuff, and he really liked my presentation with my module template and how nice the build system was, and that I managed to make some things work that they have been fiddling around for quite some time and couldn't get it right. And we actually said, like, let's connect. You know, I want to know how to build Too Sexy, and you want to improve your build. So maybe we soon, TM, get together and try to improve things both ways.
Stuff like that's what makes me excited about open source and community events and stuff, is because that just wouldn't have happened probably without being
Ever.
in person and, you know, seeing that, because I think you could help a lot in that area and they could help, you know, you with your needs and stuff and really get some synergy there going. That would be really a benefit for everybody in the end if they can refine, because it sounded like they had some real challenges that they've been trying to solve, you know, with their build process. So, and some of those nuts you've already cracked. So it's nice. Along the same vein, Tonchi, who a lot of you know, with Too Sick, he mentioned, he made a special point and just come over and say, hey, thanks for doing these meetups. We really want to be involved in doing these. It's just sometimes the timing is a bit tough because it's on a Friday, evening for them, and they're awful work and they're spending some family time and stuff like that. But he was so appreciative of something like this actually happening. And so I was telling a few that were here right before we started the recorded part of this that we may try to experiment a little bit with flip-flopping the times for this meetup, kind of like we do with the Southern Fried DNN meetup, so that they could attend, at least on alternating, because I know this time is a better slot for some of you, and some of you want it even later. And I understand that too. We're never going to make everybody happy, but at the same time, it'd be nice to have them represented in some of this. I think we could all learn a heck of a lot, by having those brains in the call. So, but it was nice to see that that at least they're noticing that something's happening and there's a lot of interest from people. So yeah, thanks for y'all participating. It makes that possible. Who else? Who has something to show? Oh man.
You need to
What a
hit that
crowd.
crickets button on your soundboard.
I know. Let me see if I can find that here somewhere. I know it's here somewhere. Crickets. There it is. I don't know if it's coming through. It's probably not coming through because I'm not sharing computer sounds, but
I can share something, but I don't remember if I've shared this or not.
Well, hey, any content is better than no content. So let's go for it, Aaron. I'll go ahead and stop sharing here.
Look at the average age.
Sure.
We probably also don't remember if you did that or not yet.
So I think, let me just share this. Okay, hold on. Give me 1 second.
One.
Share screen. Basic desktop 2. Okay, so I think last time, everyone see that okay?
Yep, sure can.
I think the last time we had a meetup and I shared this page, which was the 2021 annual report. So this was the original one I made was the 2020 annual report, and it was not in 2SXE. It was just a regular, it was actually in DNN. It was just all built into one big theme. But then I converted it into a 2SXE series of apps. But then, since then, so I don't know if anyone remembers this one in particular.
I do, yeah.
Yeah, so since then, they've actually done 2022. So I just wanted to share that. And
oh, cool.
I thought I'd share some insight actually into the project itself, just in case anyone is curious. But this design is so particular, and so much of it is so particular, and that it wasn't just a complete handover to them to just drop a bunch of apps on the page. I did end up having to make some minor adjustments to the apps. So each app is by section essentially. So you've got like a navigation app. We've got this masthead app. Then we have this sort of intro app. I did end up having to make some modifications because the illustrator who is working, so there's like the content people, and then there's the illustrator, and they're working together. And so the illustrator would put up these images that were, needed a different contrast for some of the fonts, for example, or they introduced different colors that they wanted to use. So one nice thing is, as you guys are already very, very familiar, you can drop in presentation settings later into an app. It's not like an app is set and fixed and done forever. You can always just drop in new settings for people so that they can, these people, we all kind of worked at the same time. So they dropped in this module and then they went, oh, actually we need, a different button color, a different whatever. We need a slightly different layout or an option for a different layout. And we didn't have to, go and copy that app and then make a new one and delete this one and swap it over. We just added new settings for them so that they can, they can continue on in the exact same app that they already started. So this is a good example where originally these were all icons, like little circular icons. And then they were like, oh, well, we actually want these to be bigger because we're going to put these kind of scratchy looking images here. And so we updated that with presentation settings for the image sizing. So then suddenly they have that ability. The kind of neat thing, of course, as you're aware, is that now their previous years actually have those functionalities too, if they wanted to go back or whatever, which is not really relevant in an annual report because they don't really change that, but it would be for existing apps or apps on a regular site, like a hero app or something like that.
I'm curious, Aaron, did you have to think through, like, did you use the same app as before and evolve it? Or did you use that as a copy to create a new app and kind of evolve it from there? And if the latter is true, did you have to kind of think about, okay, I need to do things in a way that's not going to break the old implementation of it?
Yeah, so I didn't create any new apps. They just used the existing apps. And yeah, I definitely did have to consider, okay, how is this going to affect the data of the previous ones? And I think there were some cases where I needed to go back and kind of tweak or reset the values, at least, of those particular things. So yeah, I did have to kind of jump back to the previous one, but that's only because I didn't want to go to the effort of creating a brand new one just for this year, or like this year going forward at least. But I think there's about 15 or 16 apps for this entire page, or each year has a series of 16 apps that they use throughout. But yeah, I just wanted to share this one because the design is incredibly rich, and a lot of this design, it's funny, I didn't anticipate, I guess, like they just go in and they just go nuts and they resize their images and test it out. And sometimes they come back with like little changes, like, oh, can you make it so that this image has the ability to kind of always center out versus anchor to the bottom right, because that's the way that we want the layout to be. So yeah, a lot of good stuff in here, and a really very, very visually rich site, which I kind of like this stuff because I usually work with stuff that's a little bit more like UX UI wise is way more clean and simple and modern, and this is sort of fun to kind of see, like, okay, like an illustrator is just going nuts making whatever whatever they want, and then I have to kind of help contain it. But yeah, it worked out pretty good.
Really excellent. Yeah. I'm curious, how complex are your data tables? I mean, do they tend to just have like 10 fields and 10 entries, or they get really crazy sometimes, or just what's your experience with that?
Oh, like the content types.
Yeah.
Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. They're pretty simple. I would say, so I mean, like, it's a combination of things. They're relatively simple, and I also use sub-entities a lot. Oh. So if you look at something like, okay, let's take a look at this masthead thing. This is a heading. This is an image field which is a sub-entity, so that they can, which I reuse a lot, like, is the image field. This is an image entity. And then this is just a description. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, and then there's a background image, which is technically a presentation layer. So there's 5 right there. But if you go to something like this, this is actually really neat. So this is a field called a heading. There's like,
that was a nice modal, by the way. Click on that again. That was really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So actually, I forgot to kind of show this. This is really cool too. So I actually have a modal as a sub-entity. And then that sub-entity has, like, it doesn't technically have presentation settings, because you can't set presentation settings on entities. You can only do it on, to my knowledge, you can only do it like on that main item. So So this, they've got a heading, they've got a quote or like an intro text or something, photo, and then they have a modal entity, which is a bunch of its own fields. So it's got modal heading, modal text, modal image, and a modal background. They might even have modal presentation for swapping the images around, but that might be a different one. But then this, yeah, I think if you actually look at something like over here, let's see. Yeah, so this one actually is the exact same app and the exact same modal. So yeah, the same modal entity. So they actually set the background image. And this is something I think I've got it here. Oh no, it's a different one.
So it's
I was
like
just
an
gonna
image
say-
that's anchored to the top right or something in a fixed position, and they just
Yeah.
kind of control that. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, I think actually there
creative.
might be a lot of these actually have like settings for actually setting image widths and stuff. I don't think
Oh.
about the modal, but I think some of the background images for these things. But yeah, they can sort of set those things. The other thing I was going to show was, it's not apparent here, but actually, for example, like sometimes they would have background images that suddenly the modal X would disappear because the background image was white. So I actually had to set presentation settings to let them choose, okay, what's the modal class color, like what the modal close color is. So there's a lot of detail in this that just lets them just go kind of nuts, and they can put whatever images they want, and they have the options to kind of adjust things to make sure it all looks right.
That's really putting the power in the hands of the designer there, isn't it? That's really cool.
Yeah, exactly. And then, yeah, this is like a count up, I think it's called, or something. So when you scroll to, the numbers count up, and it's all fancy and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, this is actually a custom. I mean, this is an app, and it's grouped by. You notice these? I don't know what you call these sort of colored groups, these sections. So these cards are actually sub-entities of the group. And then I have a custom JavaScript that just does a timeline thing that scrolls through it. So when they go to edit this, they just, they add groups. So a group would be like, let's say, Seed Survivor, and then they add cards to that group, and all these little nice touches are automatically created. And they can even select the color of the of the group, like they actually select it from a drop down. Yeah, I've got a lot
Just
of
something
animated
simple
GIFs
there,
and,
huh?
yeah, that was actually, I think, one of the more sophisticated things. Actually, this might have been, if I remember correctly, this might have been a different app than the one in previous years, because it was a bit different. The one in previous years looks like, here it is, like this. Whoa, something's funky that's going on. But I'm trying to remember if this was different somehow, but I actually forget. I mean, visually, it looks very different with the grouping. So I think it was, in fact. So yeah, like this has more of a sharper kind of angle. Oh no, wait a minute. I'm very confused. Never mind. Disregard what I said. I thought it was different, but I might be thinking of a different thing. You can see there's a lot on this that makes it very complicated. But the nice thing is that, the next year, I imagine the amount of presentation settings I'll have to update is probably going to be a lot less, because maybe it's just brand color or something like that, rather than positioning of images and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, it has other modals on the page and all that. So yeah. Oh, I forgot an image there.
Super impressive, Aaron. I think you should sell the toolkit.
Possibly. Actually, one thing that's really cool too is something I'm getting into a lot more is actually customizing the app icons. It was especially important in this one because everything looks so rich. But I think I can kind of show you that. Where is it? I'll just show you kind of a screenshot. But this is from my portfolio. But do you know the I don't know what you call this, the drawer type
The
of thing when you're
app
selecting
icon,
your
yeah.
the app icon. So they actually see all of their you know, what it looks like before they're dropping it on a page.
Nice.
We've started doing that over the last year, a little bit over a year, and it's really made a big difference, especially for sites that have a lot of apps, you know, because it's hard to remember kind of what those
Yeah.
what those are.
Yeah.
How do
If
you
I
do
had
that?
one-
Is it just a file with a special name, or do you?
Yeah, it's by convention in a certain place, certain
Okay.
type, but it's pretty easy to implement. There's two different well, there's the app icon there, and then there's the I'm drawing a blank right now, but yeah, it's really easy. It's by convention. It's actually in the documentation as well.
Sure,
Documented
everything
pretty well.
is.
Yeah.
Somewhere
It's just
in the
yeah,
abyss.
you
Yeah.
you go, it's like portals, and then if it's zero, like if you're on the zero portal, so it's portal 0 to SXC, and then you find your app folder. So if you have an app called like Hero, you just drop an app-icon.png in there, and that's for the whole app, and then you copy the name of the template. So you have a second thumbnail, which is the template thumbnail, and then it's just the exact same naming scheme. So if it's like _hero.cshtml, it's _hero.png.
Sweet.
So it's pretty easy, pretty quick to implement those. You just upload them through the FTP or whatever.
I
Oh,
just
great.
dropped a link in the chat there for you, John, for the documentation on that.
Thanks.
Yeah. If I had one complaint about this, is that I wish it would also show you the name before you hover over it, because I always like to read the thing, but
Yeah,
I don't know. It's like maybe I'm being too picky about that, but yeah.
that could be helpful. I would agree with that. Of course, it takes up more space, right? So the
Yeah.
other thing is I would love for there to be, I don't know how they would pull it off, but you know, being able to see a full size of that if it's really just too small for them to really see it. 'Cause
Yeah.
sometimes
I
on
think what would
intricate stuff is tough.
really help is if these icons could wiggle.
Yeah, that's right.
Float over the screen so that
Yes.
you can't hit the X mark. That would be awesome. Yeah.
You know, for you mean like this?
Yes. Well, like in DNN when you put a module on a page, that was the
And-
reference.
Oh, the
Because it
floating.
wiggles in the middle, and if you're trying to cancel, you can never hit the X.
It's like,
That's right.
slow down. Stop moving.
Yeah. So yeah, that's one of the later things I've done that I think is interesting to look at. If I think of anything else, I'll chime back in, but I'll let someone else show something.
Well, Aaron, I would say that if there was a contest going on for the most, you know, creative implementation of Too Sexy, that you would probably hands down win that. We've done some crazy stuff, but probably not quite that impressive, you know, visually, because it sounds like a good team effort into that one.
And I really like
Yeah.
the visuals, the branding, the white space, like very, very nicely designed.
Very well
thanks.
done. Hey,
Thanks a lot.
just let them know on that one little slider that does the album thing that they've got white edges around there. They need to get real PNGs in there.
Oh yeah. Let's see.
It's like, for such a
Yeah,
beautiful design, that was the thing that popped out at me. You know, I'm like, oh, really?
Oh yeah. You know, I did not notice that until now. Okay.
You were too close to it. That's probably why. Yeah.
That's right.
No, fantastic.
Thank you.
Well, we've got a few more minutes here. If anybody else has anything they want to share.
Well, I have a problem. How about that?
Oh, that works.
Okay.
Bye.
So,
You can show and tell your problem
yeah,
and see if you can
exactly.
solve it. Yeah.
So let's see. Where do I claim? I don't see where to claim.
That big green button down there should be a good one.
Oh
to
yeah,
start with.
sure. The obvious one. Okay. Okay, you see it?
It's coming up. Okay, yep, we're seeing it now.
Okay, so basically all this is people during an emergency get to say there's oops. Let's go
I see the
here.
problem. Not just kidding.
Yeah. So anyways, they enter a bunch of fields and there's some drop downs and stuff like that, and they can assign it to someone. And then it just displays in a sort of boring grid, or I can do a list format, which will come up in a minute. Should. Anyways, and I'm just trying to figure out how to display it better so people can look at it. If I do the table, I go back to the table, which there's list. Okay, so if I go to the table, and I'm basically just wondering how, the only thing I have so far is if I hover over it, it'll bring up better visibility of some of the items, but it's like how to get them all to show, how to display a lot of information in a small amount of space. And so it's not anything too sexy specific. It's just more what suggestions do people have to better style it.
Ooh, that's a loaded question. I guess it's more of kind of what information, what's the biggest amount of information you have, and
Sure.
kind of designing around that and then working backwards. But one common technique is just really to use a modal. So you might would want to put an icon on the road that's like a little magnifying glass or something. And then when they click that, they would get a proper modal, kind of like Aaron was showing earlier with the modal up, and then you could display scrollable information there. That's one way. Hovering, just remember it's not accessible, unless
Sure.
so just accessibility concerns there with that kind of thing. Sometimes white space is a really good thing with tabular data like this. Like I notice on the left and right edges of the cells there's no real spacing, so it becomes hard to digest.
Another idea that comes to mind is you can have more than one piece of data per column. So let's say the I don't know, the property and the title could be in the same column, one above the other. And same thing for the dates, incident time and time cleared. They could be combined into one column. And the, I don't know, the observer name and observer contact maybe can go together. And that saves you a little bit. It helps.
Yeah, that would help a lot. Basically, I could do sort of a paragraph format of all those individual fields and then have the description be a bigger thing. Yeah, I like that a lot.
It helps a bit.
Perfect. Come back for version 2 in a month or 2.
Yeah. It's always challenging when you have that much data, that needs to be visualized. It's always a challenge. I mean, we've done some interesting thing, especially if you're trying to make it responsive. There are some neat tricks where you can kind of flip the columns and rows a bit and kind of put them in groupings. That's one thing that you could look at doing if if it's just too wide.
Sure.
Scrolling is difficult, especially in cells. I mean, that's a tough one.
Great.
One thing I saw this week was on the Ford website. It has nothing to do with too sexy, but one design problem of having too much content for the width you have is on mobile. When you try to do comparing products, let's say, and then you can never see all the products and stuff. And I found it very interesting because everything scrolls but the titles. So you have like your your whole columns move around, but this title stays static. And I found it a very interesting solution for a comparison table on mobile.
I think you shared that with me. It was actually pretty good. It was a nice, great. It's kind of like a left right slider kind of thing, but it worked on mobile, but it also worked on desktop really well. So
yeah,
it's nice. Okay, well, anybody have anything to share within 5 minutes or so? on that. I had in my back pocket just installing version 16 and exploring a little bit, but that's just more for time killer if just that kind of thing. So I don't think we have enough time really to dig into that. But any kind of cool techniques that you've learned recently? I mean, I know there's a lot of new stuff in the formulas. So those of you that are using formulas, have you done anything interesting with that, with some of the new features? We're still at a basic usage of those, just hiding and showing fields and different views. We really haven't done anything crazy there. I was really impressed with some of the stuff that I won't even, the guy that I can't pronounce his name right.
João.
João. That's what I said. Yeah. And that was showing some pretty cool stuff with formulas there. It was inspiring, but it's like sometimes when you're building these things, you're almost kind of forcing it into a simple model where you don't need some of that stuff, And I know for us, we don't go too far with a lot of that because most of our use cases are pretty simple.
One thing that I've enjoyed quite a bit is CodePen.io has really fun CSS examples, and they send out a weekly email that has a little bit of promotion, but it also has like 6 fun samples of CSS that people have done, and they're often very simple hamburger menus or something, but they have fun effects. And so I just bookmark a number of them out of joy and appreciation, not knowing where I'll ever put them into an actual website, but they're fun and creative, and they demonstrate fancy CSS or at times.
That is cool. Can be inspirational too. Really kind of point you in the right direction. Like, oh, I didn't know you could do that. Maybe if I do this.
Yep.
I'll share this since we don't really have anything else to really share here. But I was meeting with a new client yesterday in our office about a mobile app that they're wanting to build for this local parks and rec type thing. And we were kind of talking about the process and what ideal, and they've got an existing website that's built in a platform that's not DNN or WordPress. It's just something specific to municipalities and stuff like that. And we didn't know a whole lot about what could or could not be done within that context. So you end up with that they have all kinds of challenges with that system as it pertains to maintaining their content on the website. Anyways, my point is this: we're wanting to leverage that content, but it's not done in a structured fashion. So obviously, Too Sexy comes up in the conversation, or just structured content in general. And it never ceases to amaze me how impressed people are when you show them how easy it is to maintain some of this stuff, So I showed them an example of a site, with some basic structured content kind of implementation there, and say, now, if you map this over and think about this in relation to your content, so this is how you would manage your back end if we were particularly, if we built that just specifically for you to manage the content that gets surfaced on your mobile app. And they were just blown away. They were like, oh my gosh, this is exactly what we need, and all this kind of stuff. And it's just kind of cool. I mean, it's another reminder of why stuff like this is so good, and because at the end of the day, it's providing a tool that is easy for somebody to understand that doesn't have to have any real technical knowledge. It's really neat. Okay, well, I guess that's probably it for this month. Appreciate everybody joining, and hope you have a wonderful weekend coming up. And if you're joining online, thanks for joining us again. If there's content ideas that you have for these meetups, chime in below in the comments and let us know, because we're always looking for somebody to come and present, and you see how easy it is. There's no pressure here. It's a nice group to even mess up in front of, and we won't laugh too hard at you. No, we'll just join in, because most of the time the laughter will be because, yep, I've been there and I've done that. I have stumbled on that. So yeah, just come and join us live if you can for some of these. The more we have, the merrier. So I think next month, if I were to bring this back up, let's see what the format is next month, because I don't know off the top of my head. Let's see here. This is the June. Let's go back to the here. Go look for July. Oh, I don't even have it in there. Okay, so if we look at the past, I could tell you which format it is. Go back to the, oh, I thought I clicked on that. Oh, they're having issues. Okay, the past, let's see, May, we had the workshop. Okay, so yeah, next month in July, that'll be the first Friday of the month, which is July the, what is that, 7th actually. So it'll be a presentation format. So if anybody has something that they want to kind of present, it doesn't have to be for the full hour. I would say a good, 20 to 30 minutes presentation would be totally sufficient. Of course, we could probably go as long as about 40 or 45 minutes and still be able to get announcements and stuff like that in. But let us know if there's something of interest to you to present, and we'll get you on the schedule for July. So until then, hope everybody has a good one and
David?
great weekend. Yes, sir.
Do you want to explore changing the time? Earlier is fine by me, but I don't know if this is the format.
Yeah, I thought about this. If nobody kind of reaches out, I may just try to reach out to Daniel Metler and see if there's something that he would be interested in presenting for next month. And if we do that, then we would probably shift this back to an earlier time frame in the morning, East Coast. So
Great.
Yep. Okay.
Thanks all.
Thanks a lot. Have a good one, everybody.
Yeah.